Hello, good evening. I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live. And with me this evening is the Minister of Finance, Minister Richard Gibson. Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Good evening, Oral. Good evening, TV listeners. Thanks for your invitation. Glad to be here.
And thank you for accepting the invitation. So, how's the job as Minister of Finance for St. Martin?
Hectic, very challenging. But if you're making progress, it always gives you a great deal of satisfaction as long as there's progress. And I think we're seeing some progress.
Are you surprised when you got in there and saw what was?
Well, what I was surprised about, to be honest with you, is the mountain of challenges that you're confronted with, and an environment where you have to produce and try to accomplish something. It's like the old book with the story of Rumpelstiltskin. I don't know if you know it from the Aesop fables, where Rumpelstiltskin was required to go in a room and he's given straw and they say, go and make concrete blocks. So we're trying to make concrete blocks from straw.
You know, when you look back at the whole thing, you know, because I tell people when we spoke about St. Martin and St. Martin attaining separate status, at the time everyone spoke about Aruba, and everyone was saying, even the kingdom was saying, the kingdom government was saying, you can't get separate status like Aruba. Today we have separate status, and a lot of people felt that it would have been better that we would have had a lot more money, that we won't have budgetary problems, but we have just the opposite. Well,
I think that's a little of an oversimplification. Bear in mind we're part of the Netherlands Antilles, and they had accumulated debt from borrowings to the level that they could not repay their borrowings. And we, who did not benefit or profited in any way from the monies they borrowed, because we are part of the Netherlands Antilles, every year, our share of those debts that the Netherlands Antilles built up increased every year. Every year. We complained. We complained to Holland. We complained to everybody to take steps to stop this. And it did not work. And eventually, if you didn't get out, it would only get worse. Now, what went wrong? We were promised when we were getting out of the Netherlands Antilles that we will get debt relief. And part of the agreement was that we would be guaranteed a good starting position. What happened? The debt relief never came. It was about 160 million. About 50 of it was paid for debts we had to the pension fund of the Netherlands Antilles. That was taken off, and the rest of the money never came. And the good starting position was very crucial because we were accustomed of running an island territory, an island government. We were never accustomed to running a country. All of the human resources to run the country were in Curaçao. And when we stepped out of the Netherlands Antilles, those human resources stayed in Curaçao. So when we were promised a good starting position, we expected that there would be assistance in a short period of time to create the human resources that everybody knew was required to be able to sustain and support country St. Martin. And that's where it went wrong. No debt relief, no human resources. The institutions we had to build up from scratch. I mean, there was never a Department of Justice. There was never our own governor. There was never a Ministry of Foreign Affairs or a Department of Foreign Affairs. There were no High Council of Advice, no accounting chamber. All of the required high councils that a country needs, none of them existed when we started 10-10-10. We had to start, invest, and build that up with the meager human resources we had. So it was a challenge, and we needed help. And that help that was promised did not come. That's where it went wrong.
Is it possible that we failed to plan properly?
Well, you can plan, but if you don't have the human resources to plan, you could plan as much as you want. The plans will be defective, you see?
And what about the part where the Dutch government said, look, we need to see receipts, and St. Martin never gave the receipts. So that's why, according to people who are knowledgeable, saying that, look, the relief was there, but St. Martin screwed up.
If you believe that story, then I ask you, well, what happened in Saba? What happened as far as the same thing is concerned with Statia? What happened with the same thing with Saba? All of the islands of the Netherlands Antilles had that same identical problem except Curacao. Why? Curacao had the human resources. And they never, throughout the time in the Netherlands Antilles, built up human resources on the other islands. Now you're confronted with, all right, go and look for receipts for years. Is your finances in order? Do you have the carriers to show what you happen? So what they did with Bonaire, Saba, and St. Eustatius, they applied a probability clause. They would ask themselves, well, is it probable, although you can't show the receipts, that you did have those expenses and you did spend that money? And as far as Saba is concerned, Statia is concerned, and Bonaire is concerned, that was applied. When it came to St. Martin, no. St. Martin had to come with proof.
But could that be because of the history of the fight with St. Martin and how they view St. Martin?
Well, it's not a matter how they view St. Martin. It has to be an objective determination of what was. And what was that all the financial capacity, all of the legal capacity, all of the civil servants' capacity to run country stayed in Curacao. We were accustomed of pedaling along, running an island territory. But running an island territory is a little different story than running a country. There are much more institutions. I'll give you an example. Throughout the years, if there had to be people traveling to international organizations, who were the people who went? Only people from Curacao. And through that got experience. We didn't, because we were part of the Netherlands Antilles. What is happening now? Slowly but surely, you see our own people are now traveling, participating in these conferences, getting the training in that way. It takes a while before you reach the point you have to reach, but at least we have started. That's the benefit, I think, of being in the situation that we are, that at least you see our own people in the high councils that we have now that weren't there before. You see people manning certain positions now that didn't exist before. And it's like everything else. You want to learn something, you learn it through falling down, getting up, brushing off your clothes, continuing, falling down again, and you will get it. I always mention to people, how did we train our children to swim? They took them to the small pier in Phillipsburg, and they take them and throw them over the pier. And they would paddle, and they'll cry with fright and what have you, and then they would climb up and come back, and then they'll throw them again. And they are fighting back, and by the fifth or sixth time when you do that, you don't have to push them no more. They start to jump over, and they learn to swim. And they enjoy that swimming for the rest of their life. So you need to learn by doing, by falling and getting up and doing yourself. Let me explain to you, to put it more in practical terms. We have a civil servant apparatus that's not able to do the job the way it should be done to sustain and support St. Martin's economy and the civil service apparatus. And they're not doctorandus this or accountant that or a specialist this. Most of the people who were there are people who we have put into the positions but really don't have all of the tools that they need. What do? Because they are unable to carry out the job the way it should be carried out, we now hire consultants. There's so many consultants that we have hired and paid for over the years. It's unbelievable. Why? I spoke to the head of one of the departments. They have about 18 people. And I asked him, well, why can't we get our people to do X, Y, Z? And he says, listen, I only have from the 18 about 4 or 5 who can do it. The others, they can't. That's what my head of department is telling me. And I said, well, why can't they? Because they don't have the capacity. I said, well, what are they doing there? They were hired. I said, but why did you hire them? He says, I didn't hire them. I said, well, who hired them? He says, the way it went. They had to fill up these formations to fill up the quota that they have for personnel, and that they would tell the politicians, these are the people I need and want to hire, and the politician just says, no, I have a friend down there, so this is the one you're going to hire and sign off and put him in government apparatus. Now, when you do that, of course, you're going to have the situation you have today. That's what you have to deal with. And how do you deal with it? You cannot deal with it by saying, all right, leave them there, pay the money that you're paying, and expenses for personnel is extremely high in government. And when you go and hire consultants to do their job, which is happening, and which has been happening now for years, that consultant gets paid on an hourly basis. The amount you pay the consultant is 4 or 5 times the amount that it would cost your civil service apparatus if they knew how to do the job. So you need to start, I think, with my theory about how children learn to swim. No. Those 15 of the 18 who you say can do the job, they have to do it. They have to do it. Yes, they're not going to do it the way you want, and they're going to make mistakes, but that's all right. You learn from mistakes. In that way, if you were to do it the other way and continue to hire consultants, we will stay where we are and have been for the last 5 years. 5 years from now, you come back, you're going to find the same situation again. But if you let people learn by doing and monitoring them and insisting that they follow the rules to get things done, in 5 years' time, there'll be a complete change.
So have you all been able to really figure out where the problem is, why so many people working for government can't perform?
Well, I just explained you why.
Because the reason I asked that question again, because some people are saying to me, it's also the language. And I want to know if it's true, because it's hard to believe it.
No, I don't think it's the language. No, the language is not a part of that problem. The problem is that if you hire somebody to do accounting work, but they don't have all of the skills and all of the tools that it takes to do the accounting work, you're going to get deficient products produced.
But I'm surprised that this is happening, because I know that I worked for the government for 10 years, and I had to provide my degrees and everything else. And I thought that when they hired people, that was done still. So am I supposed to believe now that since 10, the government just started hiring people without really looking at the background and qualifications?
Well, I told you what the particular head of the department who I was holding responsible.
He was filling a quota, he told you, something like that. He had to meet the quota of how many people to put in that department.
No, everybody had that. When government started, when the country St. Martin started, each department had a formation. The formation was the quota they have for each department and the positions that are required to run that department.
And they just put people in.
So he told me, when I asked him, well, why isn't your department He says to me, I only have about 5 people out of the 18 who can really perform. And I said, well, what happened to the other 13? And then he says, the other 13 can't. He says, we tried, we trained them, and they can't. They just can't. He was absolute in that expression. And then it struck me when he explained to me, he says, listen, what has happened is that some people have been hired in certain positions that they should not have been hired the first way, but the way they got hired was family, friends, neighbors, what have you, to have a job. And when his formation, his quota was filled up, of course he can't hire no more people. And that's when they start hiring consultants for everything. And the more they hire consultants, the more the people that we have remain where they are. They don't improve.
But you understand, Mr. Gibson, how difficult it is for me to it's difficult for me to understand and believe that. I can't imagine that a government in today, 2016, will be doing this, because I was made to believe
they did
that
it before.
They
did it before, not in 20.
I mean, but I'm just adding, because for people watching this program, my God, we all realize that government will have a percentage of workers, civil servants, who really can't do the work. But what I'm hearing here, this is alarming.
Well, I'm just telling you what my department tells me, because I don't see the production level that it should be at, and getting and digging into it. This is what I'm finding, and it's across the board in almost in every department, whether it's a tax department, whether it's a finance department, justice department, you name it. So we have a mountain of challenges if you think long term. And you have to come up with ways, how do you get this fixed so that 5 years from now, we're not in the same position discussing the same problem, that you could see some movement, and that is a huge challenge. It's going to be
painful. It's going to be painful.
Well, of course it is. You don't get to do the things that you want to do. I'll give you an example. Every year the IMF visits us. Every year. Why the IMF comes to assess the situation here, to compare trends in the region or worldwide. And to do that, they need statistics. They complain, and so does the central bank, that somehow they can't get the information from St. Martin. Okay? Now you ask, well, why can't they get the information from St. Martin? By the way, they're coming here in May again. I already had a telephone conference call with them. And they called me to let me know they're coming, and they're really saying to me, listen, when we come, we hope we can get the information. When I go and check, the information from the airport, it's all there. The information from the harbor, it's all there. But there's no coordination with the tourist department to have all this information ready, available. I mean, you can go on websites and from any country, or most countries, and you can access all of the basic fundamental information that you need to be able to draw conclusions as to what's going on there, what are the trends, where you need to improve, where you need help. I got, although they're coming in May, I got this information, and I sent this information to the central bank, because I want to make sure when it comes this time that all of the information and name they had. And I tell the central bank, please help me and check to see if there's additional information they're going to need, because they also have training programs, insights as to things you can do to make improvements or to tie in with world organizations to make the situation better. So it's important that we provide this information. So I'm hopeful that this time we will be able to provide all the information that they would require or need.
You still have to get that budget passed by Parliament.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't watch a lot of the parliamentary meetings on that budget, but it seems like every member of Parliament have their own wish list to that budget. And someone said to me the other day, it seemed like the Minister of Finance's like a salesman in Parliament. Is that a correct assessment?
No, I'm not like a salesman. I'm a realist. And I confront things head on. And there is nothing wrong with the budget. The budget is a realistic budget. As you know, I call it a shotgun budget. And maybe I should explain what I meant by that. Anybody who's going to sit down to make a budget has the freedom. The freedom to go and make projections, to check their income. But this budget, when you started, you didn't have that freedom. You didn't have that freedom because you started with an instruction from The Hague, from the kingdom government, telling you, in this budget, you have to do X, you have to do Y, you have to do Z, or else. So whatever you do, you have to take those things into consideration. There's a gun to your head. So what I did, different than was done in the past, I avoid any fight. And I complied 100%, I think, to all of the requirements that they wanted. Not to have it happen last year, that Parliament passed a budget, and then when it goes to CFT to get approval, they don't approve the budget because there's certain things that you did not put in it, or there's you project income and revenues that are not realistic. I took the revenues, the actual revenues that we've had the past 3 years, and I said, there's nobody in this face of the earth who could tell me that those revenues that I projected in the 2016 budget that we cannot attain based on historical numbers for the past 3 years. So I eliminate a big problem by doing that. Some members of Parliament wanted me to put more things in the budget, which you just call the wish list. But when you do that, then you run the problem that you say you're going to do X and Y and Z, but then you're going to ask, well, where the money is coming from? And then you're going to say, well, what I'm going to do, I am going to take this measure and that measure, which will project, which will give me so much more income. So the income that the other things here I'm saying I'm going to do, it will balance out. And then what has happened for the past 5 years, that every time we said we're projecting this income in the budget that's not realistic, based on things that you say you're going to do and you don't do, you end up with a budget that ends up in deficit. And so we built up 60 million in deficit over the past 5 years, which we have to pay back now based on the shotgun. That we have to go ahead, we just told, no more stories, you're going to pay that debt you built up the last 5 years.
And this is a balanced budget, right?
That's right. And you had to find the key to the puzzle to be able to balance the budget. And that's what I did. I projected a realistic income that nobody can criticize you and saying, no, you can't attain that income because it's based on historical numbers. And then what I said to the Council of Ministers, each ministry have to bring down their costs to meet that realistic amount. That we cannot spend money we do not have. It does not mean to say that we're not going to generate money. We're still going to go and try the best we can to generate more money, but we're not putting in the budget.
So in other words, we were making budgets not based on historical income.
That's right.
That's kind of crazy in a way.
Well, that's how it went, and I think that this formula that I use is going to be the formula that's going to be applied in the future everywhere.
I mean, if you have a business, you just don't make a budget like that,
right.
Especially if you exist for a number of years. You know what your income is paying.
Exactly.
So see, all of this is so surprising. And it's surprising to people like myself and others who've been following the developments in this island over the years, that you ask yourself how we got here. Because we went to Holland, spoke with the Dutch government. Arrangement were made. I don't think anyone in St. Martin know better than you. You've been a part of the negotiations over the years, right? Along with some other members.
That's right.
So you know what's going on. You've been a member of the CFT.
That's right.
So you saw when budgets came in. And then I hear what you say. Well, look, I can't. It's hard for me to believe this. You see?
Well, people do that to not have to be disciplined, you see. It makes it easier. You don't have to work as hard because you're going to do so and so. And then you ask yourself, well, which one of the measures in the 2015 budget did they execute? Zero. You see? But by telling the CFT and everybody else, at the beginning of the year, we are going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to generate this income, takes the pressure off and postpone the action that you need to take. It needs discipline. It needs what my mother used to say, you know. If you can't pay cash, you can't afford it.
So the 2016 budget total is?
About 468 million. And it's going, and we're going to generate more income. More.
So you're optimistic?
Arul, I'm not worried about the budget at all. I know a lot of people are worried about it and what have you. I'm not worried about it because I think the budget will pass. And it would give us a starting point to build on. If this budget passes, I think, because already we have to do the first quarter of 2016. It's here already, the first quarter. We still have 3 quarters left. But by September, according to the rules, you have to present your 2017 budget. So this budget would be sort of a basis to also get 2017 balance and approved in the same way that 2016 is going to get approved. So that will be, if we get a 2017 budget balance, that'll be 2 in a row. The 2018, in our multi-annual budget, it's also more or less budget balance as of now, but I think with 2 balanced budgets and applying the same system, you can get a 2018 budget passed too. And when you get it passed, you're now in a position, based on the Kingdom law on supervision, financial supervision, to invite the CFT to excuse themselves. Let me tell you something else. You know there's a CFT for Aruba.
Right.
Okay? According to the laws that's applicable there, Aruba can carry in its budget a 3.5% deficit. Okay? We have to, according to our CFT law, we have to balance. We cannot carry no deficit. If you take, make a comparison of all the islands around us, but not only the islands around us, go and take America, Holland, England, Ireland, France. All of them has a debt to GDP ratio that's much, much higher than our debt to GDP ratio. Our debt to GDP ratio is about 36%. If you take Jamaica, it's probably 110%.
Our neighbors next door, think it's also much higher.
All of them. Aruba is about 85–90% debt to GDP ratio. Now, if we were to carry, if we were to raise that by 4%, we will have a 40% debt to GDP ratio. 4% of our GDP, which is 1.9 million, almost 2 billion. 1.9 billion, it's almost 2 billion, would represent 80 million. that we could add to the budget, do capital expenditures. We can do a lot to jumpstart St. Martin, which didn't happen 5 years ago. Because the promised debt relief, we didn't get. And the good start position that was promised wasn't given to us. So we still have to jumpstart St. Martin. And this is an opportunity that we can, if we can get them to give us the same deal that Aruba had, where Aruba is allowed to carry a 3.5% deficit.
But
Now, I got to also tell you why that happened. Curacao and St. Martin and the West Islands have to have a balanced budget based on the kingdom law, because in Holland's mind, they must see to it that we don't build up no debt at all, because they don't want to have to come and bail us out again. The problem is they really did not bail out St. Martin. They bailed out Curacao. We're in the same position as Aruba, who also, when they got their independence, didn't get bailed out. That is why Aruba was able to negotiate a 3.5% deficit, carrying that in their budget, and St. Martin has to carry a balanced budget, because they say they bailed out the Netherlands Antilles, and St. Martin was part of the Netherlands Antilles, so we have to have a balanced budget. They didn't bail out Aruba up to now, and that's why Aruba can carry 3.5%. But I say, what's the difference in the development of a country carrying a 3.5% deficit? In fact, in the European Union, it's about that. All of them are allowed to carry a 3.5% deficit on their budget. They don't have to come in with a balanced budget. So that is being applied to us too restrictively.
But Mr. Gibson, don't you think they're looking at us and saying, oh, they don't have the fiscal discipline? And maybe that's the reason why the Dutch government is saying, look, we got to keep them in check.
Okay.
Because, you know, anyone following this program for the last 30 minutes, remember what you said earlier about the government, employment, people that work and can't work.
Okay.
So maybe.
But Oral, if you're going to start a supermarket business, okay, or any business, you don't go and wait until you have all the cash. You have some of the cash to start with. You try to get a loan for the balance, so you can develop your business to put you in a position that in 3, 4, 5 years you start making profit, and then be in a position to pay back everything you borrowed. It's no different with a country. St. Martin started out, and St. Martin has not been developed, whether it's human resources, which you just referred to, or whether it's infrastructure, whatever. You need to have a start-up capital. And we never had that. We need to get that to be able to look forward in the future towards having development that could keep us at a sustainable level going forward.
I have to go to break, but let me ask you this. The money that was promised, that I think 160 million guilders, you said, is it too late to really go back to the Dutch government and say, look, guys, we really need this money?
I researched that. I researched that thoroughly. Even engaged lawyers from the Supreme Court in Holland to determine this. And you know what their conclusion was? We will win that case against the Netherlands. The court will say, yes, the Dutch made that commitment. It's in writing. In fact, the CFT law is based on that. If you read the CFT law on financial supervision, you will see in there that they're saying because the Dutch will give us debt relief and promise a good start position, in exchange, therefore, we agreed to the supervision by CFT and maintaining balanced budget. It's there. So you go to court, you will win. But you will win that battle, but lose the war. Because at the end, the court will say, yes, Dutch, you're committed, but it was based on what were your debts at the end of 2005, and those debts we can't prove. And you will only get awarded what you can prove. You see?
Yeah. And the thing is, not cast and blame. A lot of people tend to blame the first Minister of Finance of St. Martin when those receipts were not provided as stipulated in the agreement.
No, that would be unfair.
That's wrong to unfair, right?
Yeah, that would be unfair to blame him because he was the Minister of Finance for that. It has nothing to do with him. It has to be blamed that through the years, financial administration of the government was deplorable.
So now that you're in government for what, for almost 4 months now?
Yes, it's the 19th of this month. We'll make it 4 months.
So I assume it's still quite a challenge.
It is. But I'm learning every day, and I have all the hope in the world that we can look forward to better times if we do the right thing, if we exert the discipline, if we recognize that we have to pull our belts a little tighter and simply do the right thing. Follow the procedures. Don't cut corners. Don't make political decisions. All of those things are tough decisions to make, but they're all required. And I see that there is, if we change, there is an opportunity that we will get hold of all of these challenges and make them work for us.
But did I hear you correctly? Don't make political decisions?
Yes, I said that. Don't make decisions based on what's politically expedient, but make decisions what is good for the country, what is going to benefit the people, what will increase their welfare, what will be give us a better life.
One of the things we heard that, so let me ask you this, because people ask me all the time if it's really true that he was in a vehicle with the Prime Minister and the leader of the UP made a proposal to have a national government. Is it true?
Yes, it's true.
Okay.
Yes, it's true. I was having lunch with the Prime Minister. That's what we were having. And then a call came in. He was driving. So to go back, he had to meet this person, which was a member of Parliament. And he asked the person if he mind, since he's having lunch with me, if I come by. And when we got there, he asked, well, let's take a drive. He said, drive to Point Blanche. And that's where we met the leader of the UP. And he got in the car, and we took a drive and discussed it. And the Prime Minister had asked, seeing the importance of the budget, if they would help support the budget. And that's when the suggestion or the proposal came from him. Yes, he would support if we would, if they would form with the political parties a national government and also postpone the elections until 2018. The whole thing took about 15 minutes and didn't last long.
Now, I was speaking with a person who was in the meeting with the governor, and they said to me that the governor assured them that the date of September 26, 2016 is the date for election, and it will not be changed. So I'm kind of surprised now when I hear a leader of a political party making a proposal that that date can be changed and move up to the original constitutionally due date of 2018.
Well, I accept that the governor might have been surprised about that, but those are the facts. That's what came out.
All right, let's take some calls for you, Mr. Gibson. Now, Oral Gibbs Live, you're on caller. Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Doc.
Mr. Gibson. The question that I am asking you, is it really feasible when these downfalls take place, that pensioners who have built this country, you know it. So you can remember, I've been working in the hotel sector. I spoke with public health and so forth, and all like that. And I've had some clashes on union level with you too. Understand this carefully. I don't see it a correct thing that pensioners should be attacked and reminders being sent to us that we owe so much and so much of money and this kind of a thing. The very first persons that are attacked are the poor, the pensioners. That is ridiculous. The next thing, there is a situation here pertaining to energy, that medicine. The word just with me.
You're talking about generic
generic medicine. Nobody ever could give an outright explanation why we in this community have to be using generic medicine. For example, this country made a lot of money, and you know it. Apparently, releases, trunks, and so forth were being flown out of St. Martin, boats out of St. Martin. Where have that money gone? Why should the pensioners and the poorer class be wiped out, the middle class?
Okay, Mr. Lake, let me have the minister respond to you, please. All right?
Let me hear your comments.
All right, thank you for calling, sir.
Well, I think the first item that he raised was pensioners are being attacked. I don't know exactly what he means by pensioners being attacked. There's like somebody is claiming money from them.
He's referring to the tax collection and so forth.
Oh, taxes. Oh, I see. Well, taxes are taxes. You know, somebody says there are two things you could be certain of in your life is debt and taxes. And if you owe taxes, legitimately owe taxes, the tax receiver will do all that the tax receiver can to collect the taxes, because everybody have to pay taxes that they owe. A lot of people get away with not paying taxes, but taxes are necessary to be able to support the infrastructure that we have here, to have schools and to pay teachers and what have you. So I'm sure that people who owe taxes, whether they're big or small, it depends on the income that you have received, and the law says that whatever that income is, you should pay your share as the law predicts. Of course, in the process of collecting from whoever owes taxes, there should be some consideration in terms of the time that you allow people to pay. And I think the tax receiver does give time, and only the people who absolutely don't cooperate, I think, have problems. The second problem I think he addressed was generic medicine. Why are we having generic medicine in St. Martin? Well, I'm not the Minister of Health, but from what I know of it, generic medicine is imported and sold because they're just as good as brand name medication. But because it doesn't have a brand name, although it does the same job, it's much cheaper. And it's the brand name medication companies who through advertising and through other ways promote their product and get people actually to buy more than what they need as far as that's concerned. You don't find that with generic. The only thing they sell with generic medication is it's cheaper. And then the third item that was raised.
I couldn't figure that one out. It said that cars and trucks was shipped out of Simrad. That one wasn't too clear to me.
No, I don't understand what he meant by that.
But you know something, Mr. Gibson, most European countries now today, generic medication, that's what's being used because they can't afford.
Yeah, also Africa.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's in most of the developed world, governments are using that. Social medicine, that's what it's all about.
That's right.
I guess maybe, brother, because you're Minister of Finance, you figure a problem. Maybe you can put some extra money in the budget to do with it.
Well, I will have to tell him what I tell the parliamentarians. Tell me where I get it from, and I'll gladly do it.
It's I think a lot of people sit down and they watch the budget debate, and sometimes they don't really understand what's going on. Do you blame them?
No, it's complicated matters. It's not simple matters, you know, and it takes quite a talent to take those complicated matters and break them down to make it understandable. Sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. But it has to do with hundreds of millions of guilders and a whole government and economics and finances. All those things are not easy to understand for everybody. So I understand that.
How do you feel about government-owned companies? And I was at a meeting one time at SHT, and it was said that government-owned companies made up something like 35 to 38% of the GDP of St. Martin. And still some of these government-owned companies don't pay anything to government. There's no dividend, there's no concession fee. Some of them, or some pay a concession fee. As Minister of Finance, what's your opinion on that?
They need to be overhauled. There are too many bad habits built up over the years, but I think that that it's a source that could benefit the government of St. Martin tremendously if good governance is applied the way it should. And it's a challenge also, but we have to head into that direction to make sure that actual supervision takes place in the companies of management and separate the two and not have them, because it was never meant to be that way, function as one block against government. CFT is a supervisory organization. And I'll say to you, no matter what I say about the CFT, if the CFT was not here, over the years, the situation would be 10 times worse. Supervision in the right manner is necessary in government-owned companies so that it forms a balance against excesses that management embarks upon.
Do you think it's asking too much of government-owned companies to have them pay a concession fee and dividends?
No, it's quite normal. Dividends, don't forget whose companies it is, government-owned companies. And the whole idea and the purpose is to operate a business profitably, and at the end of the cycle, 1 year, that you see where you are and how you did, and that you give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So as far as dividends concerned, that's automatic. As far as concession fee is concerned, concession fee is normal for all utilities companies all over the world. You want to operate a business. Government wants to rely on certain income for certain, and concession fee, which is different and distinct from dividends, right, is a way to guarantee fixed income for government on an annual basis.
And I know, speaking with some people, they feel that, hey, I'm paying a concession fee, why should I pay dividends?
One has nothing to do with the other. One is an expense, the same way as rent is an expense, the same way as personnel costs is an expense, concession fees is an expense, and dividend has to do with what profits did you earn this year.
And when you speak with the different ministries and you ask them to cut the budget, was it easy?
Yes.
Really?
It was rather easy, yeah, because it's a matter of logic. It's a matter of logic. I didn't cut, and I want you to understand this. I did not cut anybody's budget. I had a cake. The cake was the revenues that you can expect for 2016. There wasn't a bigger cake. This is the cake. And all I did was I gave everybody 7 pieces of the cake. And I said to them, this is your piece of cake. You can cut it in how many pieces you want. You can eat it when you want. The only thing you can't do is pretend that you have a bigger piece of cake. So go ahead. That's how I balanced the budget. And the ministers understood because we were in a deep, don't forget, the whole year 2015, the previous government struggled with this problem to get it solved. And at the end, they gave up because they could not get a budget balance in 2015 that will meet all of the requirements. Then comes in the new government. They're faced with the same conundrum. And eventually, I came with the solution to dealing with it, and this is the way I came with it. So they understood. It was not difficult. I didn't get any fight back or what have you, because I explained it quite clearly, and everybody understood and went along. It was not difficult.
So all we're waiting on now is for Parliament to approve this budget.
Well, the status the budget is in right now is that the ministers, based on the last meeting we had, have to respond to some questions. There were not many questions relative to the budget. There are a lot of political and rhetoric that was expounded, but when it comes to the budget, there were not many questions that were asked to start with. Some people didn't even speak. But some did, and last time there's some question asked, so when we go back now, we have to answer that question, and then the next step will be, I guess, some people will make some motions, and then they'll put it to a vote.
And you expect them to vote?
I say I am not concerned about the budget. The budget is going to pass. It mightn't pass today, it mightn't pass tomorrow, but I have no worries that the budget will pass. I hope I'm not wrong.
Well, Mr. Gibson, well, thank you for coming and being my guest.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for your listeners for listening to me.
And viewers. We're also on television. But thank you and much success to you.
Thank you.
And that's it for now. See you next time right here on our Oral Gibbs Live. Till then, good night. Take care. Bye.